In the fall of 2020, we took another RV trip out to our western states, with the primary destination being all the big national parks in Utah. This was a 6,400-mile, 53-day adventure, and we visited 12 national parks and 5 state parks while we toured Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Texas. I didn't record any video, well, except for a little Dust Devil in Saguaro National Park, but I did take approximately over 2,000 photos. That would be a lot to view in one setting, so I've broken them up into 6 video slideshows that are approximately 20 minutes long. This is part 1 of that series of videos and covers our first 8 days getting from Florida out to Moab, Utah, and then the 2 days there visiting Arches and Canyonlands National Park. We departed Florida on September the 8th. Our first stop, as usual, heading this way, was at the Weir Nut Store in Vienna, Georgia, where we indulged in plenty of samples, picked up a few of our favorite varieties, and then continued on to our first night stay at the Twin Oaks RV Park Campground in Elko, Georgia. As you can see, they got a lot of varieties to choose from too, and amaretto pecans was one of my favorites. Oh, did I tell you they had ice cream and all kinds of syrups and honey and barbecue sauces, and I mean just tons and tons of variety, and you can sample all of them. Day 2 started out with a fuel stop and then on to the Manchester KOA in Manchester, Tennessee. We arrived early in the afternoon, and Lynchburg is close by, so we took the opportunity to go visit the Jack Daniel's Distillery. This was a nice campground, and had a cute little squirrel sitting out front, but I think the pool was closed off at the time. Had a nice level site, and they have these little cabins you can rent. I thought they were pretty neat, and even a old covered wagon and teepees. It was kind of a neat little place. There's one of the cabins. Now we're at Jack Daniel's, and it was okay. It's kind of a touristy thing. I can say that I've been there and done that. Most of the places, because of the COVID, a lot of the tour was kind of cut a little bit short, and they were a lot smaller. There's Mr. Jack Daniels himself. Looked like a tiny little guy. Day 3 was just another driving day with another fuel stop along the way. Yeah, those big diesel RVs do drink a lot of fuel. We made it to Whittington, Illinois, and the Whittington Woods Campground. This was an interesting campground with live chickens roaming around, and they had some great canned product for sale in their office. I tried their pickled quail eggs, well, which were okay, but I did buy a jar of their pickled beets, which were great. And they gave us a half a dozen of fresh eggs, which we had for breakfast next morning. Day 4 was just another driving day to the Kansas City East KOA in Missouri. Day 5, another driving day and a fuel stop, and our first sightings of windmills until we arrived at the Waukene KOA in Waukene, Kansas. While checking in, they told us they served up root beer ice cream floats at 5 p.m., so, of course, after a long day of driving, we were obligated to try them out. Day 6, another driving day, got us into the Denver East KOA in Strasburg, Colorado. This was just an okay campground, as the sites were a little closer together than we like to be, but it was just for an overnight stay, and we left early the next morning. They had some nice little gathering areas, sitting around, and again, they had covered wagons kind of in a circle out here you could rent, stay overnight, and some little cabins. And they even had a pancake breakfast that they would serve you. The sites were pretty small, and if I had to put up my awning, I probably would have been out of luck. Day 7, more windmills along the way, another fuel stop, and then we arrived at the Denver West KOA in Central City, Colorado. It was only a 2-hour drive, so we arrived early enough to go take a ride through Central City. This area along I-70 probably has some of the largest concentration of windmills I've seen anywhere. Yeah, and I'd gotten a fly in our coach, and I was chasing it while I was trying to drive. Another fuel stop, and we were just getting into the Denver area. You can see the mountains, Rocky Mountains there in the background, and we were just starting to see slight signs of snow way up on top of the highest peaks. We were on the south side of Denver, so we didn't have to drive down through town. And of course, one of our daily tasks is washing that big windshield. This is the office area, and they had a big checkerboard, and a little snot, he beat me too. We were warned about black bears wandering around the campground, not to leave any food out. Had a nice slab with a fireplace, nice and level. Didn't really use it though. Here's a little history about Central City. In the 1860s, Central City was smack dab in the heart of the Colorado Gold Rush and supported one of Colorado's biggest and most historically prominent gold mining communities. When the gold rush came to an end in the early 20th century, Central City found itself with a dwindling population and economic hardship. Central City is a casino town with loads of old West history. It's a former gold mining town where visitors still come in to cash in. The historic downtown section is remarkably well kept. It wasn't until the 1990s that both Central City and the city of Black Hawk revamped their economy by introducing casinos as a prime source of tourism. They got 6 casinos there in Central City. Here we drove up on top of an overlook where you could see the whole town of Central City, and then also we could see our campground, which is up on top of this big hill up there. Yeah, you know, you're in Colorado. It seems like they had marijuana dispensaries at about every corner. On day 8, this was a long 6-hour drive, 330-mile drive to Moab, where we would finally slow down a little and have a 3-night stay. Denise did remember to decrease the air pressure in our air mattress so it wouldn't blow up going over the Continental Divide at 11,000 feet. We did start seeing some signs of snow as we went up in elevation. We were also lucky in that Route 70 had only been open for about 3 to 4 weeks earlier due to a massive fire in the Glenwood Springs Canyon that completely closed I-70 for a good 3 weeks. After crossing the Continental Divide and getting into Utah, the landscape changed dramatically. We stopped at the first rest area entering Utah just to take a break and marvel at the scenery. You can definitely tell you were in a high desert now. It was all smooth driving until we got to the outskirts of Moab. There was a major road construction project in work, so it really backed up the traffic. We finally arrived at the Portal RV Resort, and we're happy to get set up for a stay for a couple of days. After we got through all the traffic, we got into our campsite here for the next 3 nights. They had 2 areas. One's privately owned lots, and the other's kind of open camping, and we got into one of the owner lots and stayed. Then we went out shopping, and we found a bag of moondrop grapes. Day 9, itinerary for today was the Arches National Park and the Dead Horse Point State Park, where we got a preview of what we'd be seeing in Canyonlands National Park the following day. After leaving the visitor center, we're on that kind of cliffside drive heading up, and there we are looking back down into where the visitor center is. Kind of coming down out of a canyon, you go up on top of a plateau and drive back into Arches. They have really nice paved roads throughout the park, and we were a lot of pull-offs. You can pull over and take photos and stuff. And we were kind of wandering our way back to probably the most famous landmark there. They call it the Delicate Arch. And right where you park and get out, there's a place called the Wolf Ranch. And I hadn't heard about that before, but John Wolf settled in the location back in 1898 with his oldest son, Fred. And they lived in this, it looked like a little dugout. I can't imagine two people living in this thing. It looked like about the size of a jail cell. And then I think it was his daughter come out to visit, and around 1906. And they were kind of shocked at the small place that he's living in, so they got him to build a bigger cabin. Well, this bigger cabin doesn't be, but maybe 10 by 16, so I guess the whole family was living in that. Can you imagine he and his son Fred lived in this little kind of a dugout for 10 years raising cattle. There are two ways you can get to see the Delicate Arch. One is take this trail back over here and climb about 400 to 500 feet on a 3-mile round trip. Or you can drive out to another viewing site where about 3/4 of a mile away, where you can walk a couple hundred yards. I think it's the lower trail. You can go up 100 yards, about 200 feet or something like that. And that's not too bad. And that's what we elected to do. Now what I'm pointing at there, those are people climbing up that rock. That's all it was. And I convinced our son to go take the trip. I was afraid this was so early on in our trip that I didn't want to mess up my knees and be screwed up for the next couple months. So we took this little short hike, and there you can see over my hat where the Delicate Arch is. And somewhere our son up in there was with all those people. These are photos that he took along the way. And I guess he had his phone all smudged up because it didn't come out very sharp. And there's the trail that we hiked up just to get to the viewing area that we were at. Not a whole lot of vegetation, and what there is out there, if you bump into it, you will recognize real quick. This little area, we hiked back in, I don't think it was a 1/4 mile, just to see this little, what they call a hidden arch. And that was something called the, that one's called the Windows Arch. And then that was the Balancing Rock. And we got another area, and this is the Double Arch. there was some guy all the way up inside one of those caverns there singing his heart out. Like he was in a big amphitheater. Day 10. This day was probably one of the highlights of our trip. Well, for me anyway. We drove over to Canyonlands, and I got to drive the 45-mile long Shafer off-road trail. Now, Dead Horse Point is a state park, and it's a peninsula of rock atop of sheer sandstone cliffs. And the peninsula is connected to the mesa by a narrow strip of land called the Neck. Now, there's many stories about how this place got its name, but according to one legend, around the turn of the century, the point was used as a corral for wild mustangs roaming the mesa tops. Cowboys would round up these horses, herded them across the narrow neck of land and onto that point. Then they would fence off the point or the neck with branches and brush. This created a natural corral surrounded by the cliffs straight down on all sides, offering no escape. Cowboys then would choose out the horses they wanted and let the others go free. But one time, for some unknown reasons, the horses were left corralled on the waterless point where they died of thirst within view of the Colorado River, which is only 2,000 feet below. The Shafer Trail is named after the Shafer family, who were Mormon pioneer settlers. Back in 1916, they used this trail to move cattle from summer pastures up on the mesa top to winter ground on the white rimmed sandstone several rock layers down into the canyon. Shafers were credited for improving the trail and making access to the canyon easier. Many of the other trails up in the island of the sky also bear names for families who worked for them. Expanding upon the work of the Shafer, the Atomic Energy Commission widened the Shafer Trail and extended it to the White Rim Road to accommodate trucks moving loads of uranium-bearing rock from the backcountry and down into Moab for processing. The White Rim Trail is 100 miles long. As they say, it takes 2 days to travel the full trail. So we only wanted to do the Shafer Trail, which totals out to about 45 miles. But part of that is called the Potash Trail, and you'll see why when we get back down through the slides here. But it's about a 12 to 1,500 foot drop down into the canyon. And needless to say, they highly recommend a height clearance four-wheel drive vehicle to make the trail. Although it's pretty smooth up the top, wasn't that bad, but that's the trail there, all the way off into the distance. And up close, you can see the windy switchbacks where you got to go down this canyon wall. It's not for the faint of heart. There's all the switchbacks. It's not a big road, but there is just enough clearance for 2 cars to get by. Not a whole lot, and of course there's no guardrails either. I remember one time, like a position there, I had to fold in the mirrors on my truck just to let another car come by, so I had enough clearance. But it was quite an adventure. It was probably about 10-12 degree slope going down in some of those switchbacks there. I was constantly keeping an eye open for oncoming cars, so if I saw a wide spot, I would kind of hang in there for them to come by. And there's the Colorado River. To me, the travel down through this canyon down in the bottom and just really experiencing it was kind of worth the whole trip. Coming up, you're going to see some ponds off to the right hand side, bluish color. Well, that's I can't think of the name of the company that owns it, but they mine potash. What they do is they pump water down into the ground and dissolves this potash, and it comes back up. And they have it in these ponds, and they put blue dye in there to accelerate the drying of it, and then they scrape out the potash. So we finally made it out, got on some paved roads, and we come by this little boat ramp we saw, and so we pulled in there, and there was a couple that were inflating a raft, and they were getting ready to go on I think a 3-day raft trip. So we talked to them about it. It was kind of interesting. If you like this video and found it interesting, then check back to see the part 2 video where we'll be visiting Capitol Reef and Zion National Parks.